Welcome to both of you. Dmitry Pankin, Chairman of the Board with Eurasian Development Bank, and also Xu Sitao, China economist with Deloitte China. Welcome.
Thank you.
There are a lot of things going on. One of the things is people are talking about some competing mechanisms, at least in their eyes. For example, Eurasian Economic Union, OBOR, One Belt, One Road. People are saying, what does it mean, cooperation or competition?
Thanks. I think reality is not like black and white. We have both competition and cooperation. As a competition, we are, as a development bank, we are competing to finding a good project. Really, it's difficult now to find not only idea how to spend money, but good project that could generate good return. And it's very interesting for us to find project, and we are very happy if our bank will be first to find that type of project. But again, when we have project, it's interesting to share risk. And from that point of view, we are trying to find partners, other development bank with whom we could cooperate, with whom we could co-finance these projects. So again, it's kind of mixture. It's cooperation and competition.
Is Mr. Pankin being diplomatic?
No, I entirely agree with him. There are many shades. So you do have collaboration, competition, and cooperation. At the same time, we need to bear in mind, OBOR is not an investment project, it's a vision.
It is a vision, interesting. Yeah. Having said that though, you were suggesting the Eurasian Economic Union is trying to find projects that would make a profit. There are some challenges over there. Some might ask the other way around. Does that mean the vision itself, also back to the vision thing, has some original challenges to begin with?
Original challenge, you mean?
For example, geopolitics within the region. Eurasian countries, we all know, not necessarily everybody is thinking in the same thing.
Yeah,
secondly,
sure.
Everybody has their own priorities. They have interesting relations in history with Russia. And fourthly, there are different kinds of competitors in this region. European Union also want to have their own version of Eurasian as well. So is this idea viable from the very beginning?
You know, I think if we are talking about economic links, this is our most important part of our activity. So economy bring our country that we need some cooperation, we need common market, we need common standards, we need common, let's say, rules of game. And so we have a lot of reason for cooperation and a lot of reason for integration in our case. Of course, integration process is not very difficult, and you're completely right that there are different geopolitical games, there are different interests between countries. So again, it's kind of a mixture of, there are some reason for cooperation, there are some reason for integration, economic reason, and of course we have some particular interest of different countries and we have some contradiction, of course.
Same with OBOR, One Belt, One Road. You said earlier there's a vision, yes indeed, but how to implement the vision? We have seen some initiatives, but not necessarily the overall project has been nailed down. So what do you make of this?
Well, I think quite often people don't understand OBOR. They feel if there's OBOR, there will be influx of cheap Chinese capital into certain region. I don't think that's the case. I believe the essence of OBOR is about replicating China's growth model, which means if you have good infrastructure, you lay a foundation for further economic development. So it's not about particular country, it's really about replicating that part of the growth model.
But is that viable? I mean, on the other hand, because some of the economies, obviously, along the road of OBOR are not necessarily at this moment as developed as China is. They have not shorn up the cash over the years as China did over the past 30 years of reform and opening up. So how well can this model be copied, following just your theory?
Well, it's not easy. In fact, if you study economic history, it's actually not easy to find a compelling case for generating good returns purely from infrastructure. That's why you need to explore other business models. That's why you need to have certain competition. This cannot be done just by China or by any other country.
Even infrastructure itself, Mr. Pankin, has its own challenges for development banks like yours. For example, you are now working on a project. It's a tram rail project inside Russia between cities and among cities, rather than a project among countries in the Eurasian Economic Union. So does that mean, Mr. Pankin, some would say, that you're already finding difficulties outside Russia, the appropriate projects? All you can do now is pretty much defined by Russia's own border.
My shareholders' task that I have from my shareholders to find project that links countries. So it could be not tram or railway inside Russia. It should be tram or railway that connect Russia and Kazakhstan, Russia and Belarus.
But now it's all in Russia at this moment, this specific railway for now.
Which one?
The specific railway that you are considering in investing among various cities inside Russia. Is that going to go beyond the border?
First for us, it's a fine kind of railway that connects country. If you are talking about a specific project inside Russia, about tram or railway, we are now not financing any railway project inside Russia. For example, we have some road project, road project around Moscow, road project around Khabarovsk, but rail project, for us, we have rail project is across border Russia and Kazakhstan.
Very interesting. On the other hand, we have also seen some interesting cooperations between China and Russia about the visions, OBOR and also Eurasian Economic Union. But the question is, it seems that the top leaders of both countries, both President Putin and also President Xi Jinping, are very enthusiastic about these kind of cooperations. And yet when it nails down to specifics, when it nails down to grassroots implementations, there is still a question mark. Mr. Xu.
Yes, I think a lot of people, they talk about you have very ambitious goals, but so far the expectation is not being realized. But we have to put that in proper context. In the past 2 years, we have experienced quite protracted global economic slowdown and frequent financial crises in many countries. International trade is facing a lot of challenges. So you really need to put that in context. So I wouldn't just say you only have top-down directions.
Mr. Pankin, in Russia you have this pivot to Asia, in a way, strategy, also from Russia, even though that was a word invented by Washington a few years ago. Of course, later they refused to use that phrase, use it a much more PR phrase instead. But Russia's, of course, your version of pivot to Asia is very different from the US one. Help us to understand what exactly is Russia's vision about Asia and about Eurasia, so that investors will have a better understanding about whether this is viable, this is sustainable.
My feeling that it's maybe for Russia, it's not useful question. Is it Asia or Europe? Should we cooperate with Asia or should we cooperate with Europe? Question is to find our place in the existing world. We have now Trans-Pacific partnership. Yes, we have now transatlantic partnership. So very strong, very powerful, potentially very powerful integration structure. And question is for our country, where we are. How could we find our place in very competitive world? And in that case, it's necessary to find right way to cooperate between country in Eurasia. Not only, let's say, not only cooperate with China, not only cooperate with India, but find way to cooperate with all countries in our area. Without this, we cannot survive, I think.
That's a very nice way you are explaining things. That's exactly where the challenge is, isn't it? We have to figure out a way. Before we figure out a way of cooperating, we have to tell people what the visions are. At this moment, many say the working together, the cooperation between China and Russia, is a relationship of convenience. After all, Russia facing sanctions coming from the West. Russia wants to get closer to Asia. China, the same, want to get closer to Russia. And also wonderful commodities coming from Russia, as well as the traditional friendship with Russia. But all of these, they say, will that be sustainable? Investors really care about this. Mr. Pankin.
You mentioned that, for example, sanction problem, and my feeling that sanction is kind of temporary. It's not sustainable. Sustainable question is find economic reason. Find long-term cooperation.
Yes, but yes, indeed. But sanctions, in a way, gives Russia the incentive of cooperating even further or more with other countries. For example, China. And people are wondering if the overall geopolitical situation change a bit, will that continue? We've seen that with the oil prices debates going on between China and Russia. Sometimes up, sometimes down, depending on the outside environment. So will that be also the same when it comes to this Eurasian development?
Yeah. Again, my feeling that this is temporary. So more sustainable problem. What is how Russian economy could cooperate with Chinese economy? Is it only will be the way that Russian energy resources, Russian oils will be supported, supplied to China, and from going back, where will be buy Chinese clothes or Chinese electronics? So this is a problem. How to
what do you think the answers are?
My feeling that not only trade, my feeling that it's necessary to go more for investment type of activities. It will be very interesting to rise volume of investment from Chinese company to Russia and from Russian company to China. Not pure trade pattern like energy supply, Russia energy supply, and China is supply for, let's say, clothes or electronics.
I see. Very interesting point. Mr. Xu, I have to ask further on that road. Yes, invest into Russia. Many Chinese investors, as you may know very well, are very enthusiastic about this, in fact, Mr. Pankin. For example, in the Far East, there has been some preferential policies coming from Russia to do that, but there are certain things investors are looking at. Whether you got cheaper labor, whether you got, in a way, more cooperative policies, including environment and many others, and also whether it is sustainable and secure. When looking at these issues, Chinese investors, particularly private investors, scratching their head and say, well, this looked great in the Far East, but, Mr. Xu, they also said, many of your friends said so as well, that looking at the European countries, probably they're going to have a better return there. So why not there instead of into the Far East?
Right.
These are viable questions.
Yeah. So for private Chinese companies, the investment decision wouldn't be dictated or sanctioned by top leaders. That's true. It's going to be driven by economic factors. That is why I think for Russia, you need to go beyond resources. I believe Russia already looking into agriculture. That's going to be a very interesting area, because as China is undergoing this transformation, we really have to change the way we manage our economy. So industry sector may have to shrink, but consumer sector is going to be very vibrant. Outbound tourism is going to be booming, already booming. So I think all this Russia has to take into account. And I also think Chinese companies, cultural factors, they may have to work with Chinese. So immigration policy may have to result in certain adjustment. So we find out.
Well, we'll find out. But Mr. Pankin, it is no secret that the business community have been pushing for all these changes. Do you think the bureaucracy and also the system will be able to cooperate in the short term?
You know, we have both countries, China and Russia, we have a serious problem with bureaucracy, and this is again our common challenge from our business community.
Yeah, so from the Russia side, what about that?
from Russia. It's it's better question for Chinese company how they assess Russian bureaucracy and do they see some change. Of course, from inside, as a previous I was a bureaucrat as a Minister of Finance, we think that we made a lot of improvement, but it's better that investors will assess do we have real improvement or not.
At this moment, the state-owned investors are very enthusiastic at this moment about development in Russia and also cooperating with other development banks, such as the one that Mr. Pankin comes from. For example, China Development Bank. And also Export-Import Bank. Yes, Exim Bank from China. When you look at these banks and the role of, let's just say, AIIB, which is also a new initiative. What likely, from your understanding,
well,
Mr.
first
Xu,
of all,
there are
Development
different
Bank is a policy bank.
Of
Exim
course.
Bank is a policy bank. AIIB is not a policy bank. AIIB is multi-national organization.
Like Eurasian Development Bank?
Right. So they are different. I think for development banks, I think they will be following government's general directions, but not AIIB.
We see development banks following their directions, for example, and also state-owned ones following the directions of the policies. Gazprom was originally, a few years ago, getting 400 billion in a way business deal with China after the high-level exchanges back in the year 2014. But of course, with the economic and sanction situation, things have changed. So is the commodity prices. So the question is, even the state-owned enterprises and companies as enthusiastic as they used to be? Or exactly the other way around, there will be even more, Mr. Pankin?
Even more.
Even more enthusiastic about this kind of cooperation. What is your assessment?
My assessment that sanction is not a very serious question.
Yeah, it's not just about sanctions, it's also about the business environment in one another. It's also about commodity prices, it's also about ruble, and the neutral assessment of each other's economy.
Of course, commodity price is a rather serious question for us. If I talk about Russia and investors in Russia, if I see drop in energy price, drop in oil, raw materials, we have this impact in many other areas of our economy, and we see feeling of investor that now in, for example, car industry, a lot of projects are stopped. Projects are started by foreign investors because market is shrinking, and the same story in, for example, rail engine or kind of wagon production. Demand is shrinking and a lot of investment are stopped. So from that point of view, oil price affects seriously potentially foreign investment in Russia.
Mr. Xu, what about your assessment, the potential?
For Russia or for China?
For China, of course, in cooperation with Russia.
I think for China right now, no one can forecast commodity prices and predict oil price, always very volatile. But it seems to me, in the medium term, I think for Chinese companies, energy sector remains the most interesting one for further investment.
What about the future? I mean, we see AIIB going to have their first ever board meeting, international board meeting. Of course, Eurasian Economic Development Bank, you are also doing very well. So what about the future? Where are we going to start with? I think that is the most important thing, Mr. Pankin.
Start cooperation with the AIB. For us, it will be very interesting. And we send a lot of proposal for AIB, a lot of projects that we think should be co-financed. Problem, I think, AIB is emerging bank. They need now to create procedure, internal operation standard. Very serious question is government guarantee. So approved policy by AIB is to finance project only with government guarantee. And for example, in Russia, Russian government, Russian Ministry of Finance has very strict rules for issuing guarantee. It's not very easy to get guarantee, and typically investment projects are financed without government guarantee. And for example, we are financing all projects in Russia without government guarantee. European Bank for Reconstruction and Development is financing project without government guarantee. So my opinion that will be necessary to find a way how to cooperate, but this issue, government guarantee, will be a serious one.
Mr. Xu?
Yes, in a way, Chinese investment tend to put a huge premium on government guarantee, but AIIB is not a Chinese entity.
There are so many different players out there, including Russia as well as a member, not necessarily in the board though. But having said that though, I want to go, before we wrap up today's program, with further questions about this cooperation and competition issue. We talk about the Eurasian Economic Union Development Bank, and we talk about the AIIB. There's even more, the new development bank, formed by all the emerging economies, including Russia and China. SCO is talking about the idea of really elaborating on its own development bank. So money is there, but money is still limited. We've got so many entities looking for money and looking for investment projects. How is it likely to be? Mr. Xu, I want you to go first, and then Mr. Pankin.
Well, right now there's a surplus of saving from China.
Certainly.
To a certain extent, the surplus of saving due to the fact our financial system is inefficient. So I think as financial liberalization reform deepen, and we may not have such a lot of saving. But in the short term, yes, there's a surplus saving.
Okay. Mr. Pankin?
Mr.
Xu was saying there's money out there.
We have money and we have surplus of saving in Russia, and many of development bank has kind of surplus. Again, for our case, we have a lot of cash. Question for us to find where to invest.
Yes.
This is the most important question. That's why my feeling that the question is not to start some kind of new banks and gain some many banks. Most interesting question to find suitable project.